Hi, I'm Veronica, and today I wanted to walk through the books I will be keeping. I'm actually moving soon, so I had to do a big declutter, and I got rid of over half of the books that I had. It's still a lot. Literally in my head, I was like, oh, I'll probably only be keeping like, what, 20 books? Like, there's probably only like 20 books that I love. And then I pulled out all the books I wanted, and I was like, oh, okay. So I think I might actually split this into part 1 and part 2. So part 1 could be the first 3 stacks of books, and then part 2 can be the second 3 stacks of books. Because if not, this video would be way too long. I already feel like it's gonna be incredibly long, but just a little disclaimer. About 2 years ago, one of my friends moved, and when he did, he gave me his whole book collection, and he was like, hey, just so you know, I don't care, what you do with these, if you decide to donate them or whatever, but I noticed that a couple of the books that you wanted are some that I have, so he just gave me his whole book collection, which was awesome. And now the tides are turning, and now I'm moving, so I did have to get rid of like half of my books. Anyways, because of that, you'll notice that there will be a good chunk of books in here that I haven't read, but that were gifted to me by either his whole book collection or just in general. I usually ask for books and things for Christmas and my birthday. So, okay, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. The first book is Atomic Habits, and Atomic Habits is like critically acclaimed. It's wonderful, amazing. I actually really enjoyed The Power of Habit. I feel like that was the eye-opening book that I needed. I listened to it in an audiobook, so I don't have it, but I could have seen this being a more life-changing book had I not read The Power of Habit already. Because of that, it's a maybe. It's a good book. So problem solving is actually one of the books I will take with me to France. So I'm actually gonna go study data science, which I think it'll be kind of hard, and I think I'll need just like a little bit of support, and hopefully I'll be able to get that from this book. Okay, Less is a cute little book. I've started it. I don't mean to brag, but I got it signed from the authors, so it's a little special. On a side note, I highly recommend following your local library because a lot of these authors do like tours and things, and so it's kind of cool to hear like an author's in town. I don't know, I get really excited. I could definitely see this being an easy airplane read. Because of that, I might take it with me, but I also could easily finish it before I move. 1984, I'm so embarrassed. I haven't read 1984 yet, which is crazy because I like dystopias. I mean, obviously 1984 gets referenced in pop culture all the time. I just need to sit down and read it. And this is another one on my like next to my nightstand, a book that I will definitely be picking up and reading. And if I don't finish it, this will also probably go to France with me. Joan Didion, The White Album, she is just such a cool author, and I think her voice is very cool. Haven't read it, also on my to be read list. 500 Days of Summer is just a DVD. It's probably the only DVD I have. It's a keep, but I'm not taking it with me. Yeah, Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale. I don't know what it was about it. I think it was probably the time that I was reading it. I would read like 2 pages and fall asleep. Like, I was just so tired when I read this book. And who needs melatonin when you just have any kind of book that makes you fall asleep quickly? And that was unfortunately this book for me. It wasn't until like the very last couple of chapters where I actually like wanted to know how it ended. I don't know if I'll reread it, but I definitely like having it in my collection because I'm proud of myself for finishing it. It took me forever. Like, I was half reading this and like speeding through girly novels while like, I don't know, putting this on the back burner. So the Zombie Survival Guide was gifted to me from my friend. I gotta say it's a maybe. It's kind of funny to have, but like this is something where if I told my friends, hey, do you wanna have it? Like they can take it. I don't know when I would actually read it, but hey, it might come in handy, who knows? So here's a little collection of Emily Dickinson poems. Every poem is a new opportunity to understand. I don't know if I'm smart enough to read this just yet, but I can try, right? So it's cool, and I don't want to give up on it. Keeping that. War and Peace. War and Peace was actually highly recommended to me from my smartest friend, who also handed me his book collection. And I don't know when I will get around to reading the thickest book in my whole collection, but I don't want to give it away, because like what if one day I do want to wake up and just get through the marathon that is War and Peace, So, and just like any other book, or especially a series of books, like you just take it 1 page at a time. So one day I will read War and Peace. It's just not today, but I will be keeping it. Kurt Vonnegut, Breakfast of Champions. This is just, I'm having so much fun. This is a great collection. It's supposedly a very funny book. I haven't read it. It's on my to-be-read list, and also an author I really, really want to dive into. Why I'm no longer talking to white people about race. I just love the title. My boyfriend doesn't love the title, but I think it's cool. I haven't read it, but I should. And it seems like a book that I would want to take in snippets. Like, I don't know if I'll be happy if I read it all in one sitting. So definitely a book I'm excited to read. I don't know when. Okay, this is a book in French. La Ligue des economistes extraordinaire. Okay, so this was gifted to me from my family in Belgium. And at the time, I wanted to be an economist because that was sort of like the only business track that I knew. Like, there weren't that many business tracks that I knew about in high school. And by that, I mean I ended up doing supply chain management, and I didn't know that existed, honestly, in high school. But this is just such a cool book, and I absolutely love books in other languages because they're just a little harder to come by here, so I will definitely be keeping this. Okay, speaking of business, 101 Things I Learned in Business School. I got this again in high school, and I quite enjoyed it. I actually did flip through it a couple of times. It's very easy, like, to read, and there's a couple of books in this sort of series, but I think it was a really cool gift idea from my parents, so definitely keeping that. A girly book that I read this year was Business or Pleasure. Very fun. It's about a ghostwriter that isn't really sure what she wants to do with her career, or she really isn't satisfied, but then she ends up writing a story of someone who is nice to her. Yeah, so I think this book was very cute, very fun. It was recommended from a local bookstore up in Flagstaff, and I love that bookstore. So Will Grayson was the funniest book I had read to date, but I also read this in high school. And then when I was decluttering my books again a while ago, I got rid of Will Grayson. And I was like, you know what? I would like to have that back in my collection. And now I'm like, should I declutter it? But since I've already decluttered it and already repurchased it, I'm just gonna keep it. I don't know if I would read it again, but it's really fun. It's written by 2 authors, and every other chapter, the first Will Grayson writes about his life, and then the second Will Grayson writes about his life, and then they eventually cross paths. So I thought that was really cool to have 2 different authors writing 2 different voices. It was just unique, especially for that time. Anyways, Will Grayson, highly recommend. I mean, highly recommend it. It's just a cute little fun high school read, so keeping it. In the John Green sense of things, Looking for Alaska was also a really, really wonderful high school read. The newer versions don't have the candle on it anymore, which makes more sense for the story. I will say I did declutter An Abundance of Catherines by John Green. It was a book that I wanted to read. Like, I wanted to go through and read a lot of his books, obviously, but I never got around to it, and at the time, those were very young adult books, so I didn't really think it would be on my TBR, and that was actually one of the books I decluttered. Next is The Fault in Our Stars, an absolute 2014 iconic classic. But this one is extra special because my bookstore made a mistake. I was like, hey, I pre-ordered it, it should be a signed copy. And they're like, oh no, he'll sign it there. So I'm very, very fortunate to have an unsigned copy, signed copy for me, signed by Hank and John Green. So that was a very special day, and I'm really happy. It was also definitely something where I was like a 16-year-old girl, and I asked my dad, I was like, hey, can you go take me to see my favorite author? And he was ecstatic. He was so excited. So that was cool. We love having supportive dads. So next are 2 of Chuck Klosterman's books. I just think the front cover is really cool. I don't know anything about them, so keeping these. Okay, A Deadly Education, I bought it because I thought it was giving dark academia vibes, and I just haven't gotten around to reading it. So if any of you guys enjoyed this book, let me know. Until then, it's just going to sit on my shelf until I'm ready to read it. Cheers is a cute little book of cocktails for every day of the year. And my brother got it for me along with like a little bartender set for Christmas, and I think that's really cool, so keeping that. Ooh, cool. A book in a different language. So this one's in Spanish, and it's just a book about the power of transformative communication or conversation. Again, I do like reading in another language. I feel like reading and watching shows or movies in another language, it's like my brain has a little block for like the first 5 minutes, and then after that it just like switches completely. So that's always really fun and exciting once that actually does happen. How Not to Die. This is a book that my mom wants me to read. I don't know when I'll get around to reading it, but I'm also pretty sure she has another copy at her house. I don't know. I don't know if I'll actually get around to reading it, but you know, we love a little health science in there. The Silent Patient is a book that I just gave to my mom, and I heard raving reviews at the time. A lot of people in their like book reviews were saying this was their favorite book like of the year, and she read it and she was like, oh my gosh, this is so good, like you have to read it. So this one is actually much higher on my to-read list than a lot of the other ones, so really excited for that. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This was my favorite book at the time that I read it, I believe in 2021, the year that I read it. I highly, highly recommend. Speaking of favorite books, there's a book about ADHD, Driven to Distraction. Driven to Distraction was one of the best books I've read, especially nonfiction. Like, it was genuinely one of the most hands down life-changing books I've ever read. And by that I mean that was probably like my favorite 2020 read, and this was my favorite 2021 read. So we love a girl with range. The Girl on the Train had a lot of great reviews. It was obviously published a long time ago. It was a book that my parents read, and recently I was like, that sounds kind of fun, kind of cool. And I haven't read it yet, and I actually haven't seen the movie either, so I'm excited to read this. Behind the Beautiful Forever. So this was a book that I bought when I was 16, and I don't know when I will get around to reading it. American Psycho. American Psycho is very cool because there's a lot of fashion references in here, so I'm really excited to read it. Freakonomics. Okay, so Freakonomics might actually be a maybe because I've flipped through the book and a lot of what they say is also in their like podcast, and it was one of the first podcasts I'd ever read. It's a cool book to have in my collection. I don't think I'll read it just because when I flipped through it, I was like, oh yeah, I know the story, I know the story. I think I would be completely fine handing it over to someone who I knew wanted to read it. Barking Up the Wrong Tree is another book that I've started. It's nonfiction. You know what's cool about this book? It's called Barking Up the Wrong Tree, and it's written by Eric Barker, so props to him for a good title. I'll let you know if I like it after I finish reading it. I think that would make more sense. But so far, I do actually enjoy it. I started listening to it on Spotify. Here's what I will say about this. One, Taylor Jenkins Reid. She writes like I'm watching a movie. I absolutely love her writing. This is her first book, so I don't think it's as good as Evelyn Hugo, but I think it doesn't get the credit it deserves. The little thing here, it says falling in love is the easy part, and that kind of reminds me of the quote that is, falling in love is easy, staying in love is what we need to work on. And so I absolutely love the thought of like, how do we stay in love? And the book starts off with the characters falling in love 11.5 years ago, and then it fast forwards to present day. And then a couple years later, after their marriage, there's just a lot of tension, and they kind of start to resent each other, and it just goes through they go through a little hardship, maybe. And I absolutely loved it. I absolutely love learning about relationships and what makes them good. And I love reading things like this because I'm really, really lucky that I have a boyfriend that... So for example, if I talk to my boyfriend about any, especially nonfiction, like girly book, like, oh my gosh, this is happening, like he will genuinely care, like they're real people. Like, it's very fun. And so I absolutely love this book and highly recommend it. It's just a fun little love story, but a little deeper than that. Okay, Dostoevsky? No, it's from a Dead House. Okay, so this is a book that I asked for Christmas. Alright, so this is a vintage classic book from the 1800s, and I haven't read it, so I don't really have much to say about it other than I would like to read it. 6 Ways to Write a Love Letter was recommended from the same beautiful bookstore that brought me this, so I think a lot of cute girls work there because what a fun little suggestion. 6 Ways to Write a Love Letter is low-key fan fiction for Taylor Swift, and she falls in love with the drummer, and that's fun. That is so fun. They live happily ever after, and I hate to spoil the ending, but it's cute. Okay, How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is just a classic book. I haven't read through all of it, but sometimes I do flip through it. Actually, one of the last times I flipped through it was before a job interview. And I just went through a couple of like easy things you can do to make the other person feel acknowledged. Is honestly one of the easiest ways to make someone feel special and feel like you want to be their friend. So I definitely flipped through this before a job interview, and lucky me, I got the job. So highly recommend. I mean, I don't know if I would actually sit down and read the whole thing, but I think it's a good reference to just have. Okay, 101 things to do before you're old and boring. My brother got this at the book fair, and I think it's funny because there are a couple things in here that he has done. So here he has run up the escalator the wrong way. Where did he go? He went to the mall and he got a star for it. And so so because of that, I think it's really funny, and it's also fun to just like go through. I've definitely perused this with my boyfriend once, and literally one of the things in here is like get famous. And so the little activity to get famous is like picture yourself having an interview 5 years or 10 years from now. What are you famous for, and this and that. And so I literally did that with my boyfriend, and it was really funny to hear what answers you give in a fake interview. Okay, this is a little cookbook in French, and I've actually made a couple of the recipes in here. It's really cute. I'm pretty sure it's for teenagers, so it's actually really easy to follow. And I'm gonna keep it, and you know what, maybe I'll even take it with me since the measurements and everything are in grams, and the ingredients too are like more easily accessible in France, which, I mean, obviously most of the ingredients are accessible here too, but you know, it'll be in French, I'll be in France. It sounds like a good book to have. Okay, and lastly from the first three piles is Boards, Platters, and Plates. It's just a beautiful book about hosting. I was gifted this along with like a little charcuterie board, and it is just lovely. The only thing is I am vegetarian, so I would modify a couple of these, but absolutely lovely. Like, just what a thoughtful gift. So with that, that concludes the first half of the books I'm keeping video. Please let me know which books you think I should read next, which books you think I should take with me, any books that you definitely like. Let me know what your favorite books are. I absolutely love talking about books, so any comment about books would just make me so happy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!